We're on this major topic. Shalom to our friends around the world, Southern Sass. We should have much blessing, peace for all of us. We're on the topic of the Talmud, of understanding that when Moshe Rabbeinu went up to heaven and the experience of the national revelation that the entire Jewish people experienced at Mount Sinai, that was an experience of receiving the oral tradition, the transmission of how to understand the written Torah and how to understand the oral tradition that accompanies it. And therefore, always frame for yourself, we could only have a written Torah with an oral tradition to accompany it. You cannot have a written Torah and not have an oral tradition that goes along with it, because we could never read the Torah. You would never know what any words are. You would never know what the vowelization is. You would never have any context what anything means, because the written Torah does not say anything about how to read it. It doesn't tell you what letters are. It doesn't tell you anything about what is the way to read something. And therefore, any thinking individual understands that it is straightforward, simple, and obvious. You need to have a written Torah accompanied with a, thank you very much, accompanied with a oral tradition. So we've been speaking about, essentially, let's go there. We've been speaking about the oral tradition, and essentially what we did, we went into the Chumash, and we were learning from Parshas Yisro, which is the parsha, the giving of the Torah. So we went through the narrative, and we were understanding what happened at Mount Sinai. Okay? So let's just pick up from that narrative that we were speaking about yesterday, and we welcome our friends with us around the world. So wonderful to have you. If people want to share where they're writing from today, it's wonderful to know. This is our global Bible studies group. Bible studies for the global community, and therefore let's get involved together. So moving on, we said yesterday that we were coming to the mountain. I'm going to appear to you in the thickness of the cloud. Now this is very important. We're in Exodus 19, verse 9. I'll read it in English. And Hashem said to Moshe, behold, I come to you in the thickness of the cloud, so that the people will hear as I speak to you, and they will also believe in you forever. That's very important here, as you see that the prophecy of Moses becomes the ultimate prophecy. Is that God appeared and showed to the nation of Israel as a national revelation that we, i.e. God and Moses, has a special relationship, and that I'm going to reveal a prophecy to Moshe that can never be usurped. And we're also warned, therefore, of false prophets. So people have a lot of beliefs of what the world is all about. The question that has to be asked is, where are you getting the transmission from? So here we're getting a transmission from Moshe. And Moshe related the words of the people to Hashem. Okay, so now we go to the next verse. V'yomer Hashem el Moshe. And Hashem said to Moshe, Lech el ha'am. Go to the nation. V'kidashtem hayoym u'mocher. They should sanctify themselves today and tomorrow. V'chibsu simloisam. Let them wash their clothing. Let them get prepared for the third day. Hashem is going to appear to the entire nation. That's very significant. Hashem is going to appear to the entire nation. Every single narrative all around the world of any religious group has the same basic narrative. What is that narrative?
Yeah, it's that there's some sort of person, let's sort of say, had a prophet, like Muhammad was in the cave, or Jesus was, they each had their own, but we had national. revelation. That's
So every single storyline begins with the same story, which is interesting.
right.
That I had a vision.
Right.
Me had a vision, and you should believe me. You should believe me because I would never lie.
Right.
Because do human beings ever lie? They never lie. And therefore you should trust me that I had this revelation, and usually it involves me becoming the head of the new religion. And therefore, because human beings never lie, so you should just trust what I am saying is true. And maybe I have certain powers, and that itself impresses people. But I'm never telling you something that happened to you, I'm telling you something that happened to me. I had this vision. And every single world religion, approximately 4,000 recorded religions around the world, start with this same fundamental idea. That I, or a small group of us, we experience something, and this experience that we had is something that you should believe happened. Now, either it did or it didn't. If it did, they're telling the truth. If it didn't, it's not. Now, what's more important also is that they all can't be true. Because if everybody had these visions, how do you understand the contradictions between the visions?
Right.
So either nobody's right, it's all lies, or somebody is right and everyone else is wrong. And by wrong, I don't want to imply that we're not on the same team. We're all in this together, team humanity. That's our core belief. We're all in this together. We're all in this together. But what was the communication from the Creator to the creation? And this is what people have claimed, thousands of religions have claimed, that they received the communication. This is it. So you know what's different about the Jewish people? The Jewish people have a claim that is completely different than every other religion in the entire world. And that claim is what? We all experienced God together. We all experienced God. And we're still talking about that to this day. We all experienced God together, which means a national belief that all of us experienced God together. That's very powerful. When you hear that many people say they were eyewitnesses to something, does that give you more belief that it actually happened or less? If you all of a sudden come on the scene and everybody says, we all saw this happen, or you go on the scene and 1,000 people say, this didn't happen, and one guy's like, I saw it. What's a more believable storyline? 1,000 people saying, we all saw this happen, corroborating? Or 999 people saying no, one person saying, yeah man, I saw it happen.
1,000 people.
1,000 people with the same corroborating story saying this is what happened. And furthermore, they don't just tell you this is what happened, they say you saw this also.
Right.
That's even stronger. You also saw this. So the Torah is written in a way that says you all saw this. Well, if I didn't see it, then I'm not accepting this. So if you want to start a religion, you could imagine that the most powerful way to do so is understanding that this cannot be replicated unless it actually happened. Any religion would want to use this story because it's so solid, it's so believable. The problem is you can't start this story unless it actually happened. Because people will not believe you. So here the Torah is pointing out these are things that you are seeing. You're experiencing these things. You, the ones who were there, are experiencing this. And we would never accept this if it didn't actually happen. And we're still to this day passing this down. This is very powerful content here. Vigbalta esa'am saviv lemor hishamru lachem alois bahar unegoye bekatseu kol hanogeh bahar mois yumas lo yisiga bo yad ki sokol yisakel oyora yore im behema im ish lo yichli b'misheich hayoy v'lema yala bahar. We're seeing that the mountain is something we have to be very careful of as we're going up. V'yered Moshe min ahar la'am v'yakadesh esa'am v'yachabsu simloisam V'yomer el ha'am heyu nechonim l'shloishes yom al tigshu el isha. We mentioned this yesterday, so let's go a little bit further. And now we have the sound of the shofar is blowing, and the nation is trembling. V'yoytze Moshe el ha'am likrois ha'elakim. The whole nation now watches Moshe go and meet God. Min ha'machane v'yisyatzu b'tachti sahar. And we're all standing under the mountain, the foot of the mountain. V'har Sinai oshan kuloi, and the whole mountain is ablaze. Now, why? These are miraculous things that are happening. How could I convince a giant group of people, 3 million, let's say, at least 600,000 from the ages of 20 to 50, plus women, plus children, how could we convince somebody that something happened to them if it didn't? So you might say, well, everybody here was having an ayahuasca trip. They were all having a psychedelic journey. The only problem is, if you give 600,000 people psychedelics, they don't all describe the same thing.
Right.
And furthermore, if you could pull this off, why wouldn't any other religion do it?
Yes.
Beyond that, the Torah says nobody else will try this ever again. Wait a second. Moshe, if you were able to convince everybody, because you gave them all mushrooms or something, or some amazing sound and light show, or some aliens or something, if you were able to do this, then why doesn't somebody else do this? And if you could actually pull this off, then somebody else could also. So why would you put this in the Torah and say nobody else will ever try this? Well, if you could do it, somebody else could. And therefore, you could only put this in the Torah that nobody else will do this, because this is what happened. And God said nobody else will ever try this. I heard a nice analogy from Rabbi Dubov. He said, you imagine you went to Elon Musk and you said to him, nobody's ever going to, make an electric car as good as Tesla. In 10 years, nothing is going to be as good as Tesla. So you say, how do you know that information? How do you know that information? You don't know. You don't know. And there's probably much better electric cars than Tesla today, objectively. But he says, you know what? Forget about that. Nobody's even going to attempt to make an electric car. And 1 year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, nobody even attempts to make one. And you go back to Elon and you say, how did you know that? How did you know that? You could not have known that. If you did it, somebody else could do it. And you figured it out. And then he says, you know what? Aliens came down from space and they taught me the secrets of lithium batteries, and they also taught me that they will never disclose this secret to anybody else. So now it makes sense why he could make such a prediction. I mean, I couldn't have figured this out. Some aliens came down and they taught me how to make electric cars, and they told me that they're never going to do this to anybody else. You already have an explanation. So when God comes down and he says, I'm going to reveal myself to a nation and I'm never going to do it to anybody else. Well, how could you make that prediction? You could do it because God himself said that's what's going to be. And he's not limited by time and space. So when the Torah is making that level of prediction, you can only make that level of prediction if God came down and told you that. Otherwise you can't do that. So I think the world has not really touched what the Torah is. And people are speaking around the Torah without learning the Torah. And if people would just consider that one point, it would be a game changer, a real game changer.
Sure.
Right? It's beyond, right? So the Torah goes on. And we're going to start Rambam in a few minutes. So the mountain is totally burning. Mipnei asher yorad olav Hashem ba'esh. V'yal ashono ke'oshan akivshan. And there was smoke. V'yecharad kol ahar me'od. Now it's interesting because sometimes you'll have people instead of actually reading the content of something, they'll crack some joke like, what was the biggest hot box of all time? There's all this smoke everywhere. Moshe got everybody high. So that's like a cute way of saying, I don't want to deal with the reality that the Torah is telling me about. It's like, if I just make enough jokes, I can
rationalize it.
I can rationalize it. Sometimes, a good joke has a way of making light of things that are really heavy. And therefore, I don't have to really deal with the reality at hand. Everything is like that. Wait a second. Just because you make a funny joke about some giant peace pipe that Moshe is passing around, that doesn't mean that that's what happened. In fact, everything points against that. It looks like you're just making a joke in order to justify you not actually thinking about the content that's being presented here. And therefore, an intellectually honest person, and we're appealing to all of our friends around the world to be intellectually honest and think about what the Torah is presenting. And the Torah is really giving you a vision that when all the world's religions are starting with one person saying, I saw something, and the Torah is the only one that says, you all saw something. You can't make, and then nobody else will do this. Number one, you can't convince somebody, that many people, that it happened. And if you could, why wouldn't every other religion do the same thing? It's a much stronger way to begin. It adds so much authenticity. And if you could do it, Moshe, how could you say in the Torah that nobody else will ever do that? Unless aliens came to Elon Musk, like we were saying, and told him, I will never give out this information to anybody else. And then the prediction makes sense when he says, nobody will ever make an electric car ever again. So here we're not talking about electric cars. Here we're saying nobody will ever make this claim again because God came down and said, I'm telling you, I'm giving this to you, and I will not reveal myself to a nation again as a national revelation. Then all of a sudden you have an understanding of the topic at hand. And I really think we're going to start to see, like Joe Rogan's going to be just pumping podcasts out, just talking about Psukim and Chumash. I think that's really what's happening. Lex Friedman's going to devote tremendous amounts of time, invite Rabbi Dovber, or MZ Dubov, the Rosh Shiva. It's just going to be pumping out, let's get to the bottom of the Psukim. Let's speak about this book that is from God, that is qualitatively different than every other narrative story ever of the thousands and thousands of world religions, that this is completely different. It blows out of the water anything. Because every story, if you would graph this, you would see how many people experience the revelation. So like 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 3, 1, 5, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 3 million, 1, 1, 1. You can't ignore that. And if you could do it, why would you say in the book, I will never do this for anybody else? This is something for an intellectually honest person, and I know our friends out there in the world are intellectually honest and are striving to think, to really think, my friends. Think about the content that's here, and that the Torah is being written just to give you a better life, and that the real origins of the Talmud were given at the original giving of the Torah to understand how to even read the Torah, how to understand the words and the letters. And so anybody who wants to present an opinion of a prophet, of somebody that they would consider had a communication with God, so we have to look at the origin story. How do you know it's true? How do you know it's true? Either they're telling the truth or they're not. That has to be at least considered.
I do have something to say though, is that you see in like Parshat Balak and everything that Hashem did create the world with equating energy. Like there's Moshe and then you have Bilam, So I'm not trying to say that other religions are correct. I'm saying that yes, there's Judaism. It's the correct energy, the correct religion, the correct way with connecting to our Creator. But in a sense, though, like Hashem did create alternative energy that has power, though. So
That's for sure.
Is that saying that power is coming like from God Himself, only as a way to?
We're open to anybody, and we really believe a person can have free speech. Just make sure you don't speak violently and hatefully. There are laws called Lashon Hara of not speaking evil and speaking in a way that like damages a person's life and reputation. There are laws of what you should speak about, and that's not called cancel culture. That's just becoming a bigger, refined human being, is that you don't resort to ad hominems. You're able to speak about ideas. I heard it said beautifully that, like low-level people speak about people. More refined people speak about news and events. And more sophisticated people speak about ideas, that they want to elevate their consciousness to not just like he said that and she said this. They want to be elevated to a place of ideas and building and concepts. So we want to hear what you have to say about ideas. That's real free speech. It's like, what are your real feelings and thoughts on meaningful topics? And the fact that if a person says, what, so I can't like curse that other person, that's like speech control? No, that's just, you're a bigger person than that. You have a greater level of dignity. And the Torah says, we want you to not ruin your stature as a human being, and therefore don't speak slander and dirty languaging about other people. That's something that is not ennobling of who you are as a person. So we want to hear everyone what they have to say, but we want that you should defend your position. And if a person says, I think that this person got a transmission from God, well, the Torah says that nobody could usurp Moshe. So if somebody says, you know what? I say that you are allowed to steal. Peter Pan. You are allowed to steal. Robin Hood, excuse me. Steal from the rich, give to the poor. So he's a thief. What you should do is speak to the rich and tell them, you have a responsibility, a moral obligation to help people in need. You don't go steal from them. So if your prophet says Robin Hood is the man, well, you seem to be usurping one of the 10 Commandments. You can't do that. And where is he getting his content from? Is he telling the truth? Is he not telling the truth? I don't know where Robin Hood received his Masorah from.
But to the Sonic's brilliant question, as far as like Parsha Balak has to go, like when it comes to Bilam, he was someone who had prophecy, but he wanted the Jews to go against the Torah.
That's right.
So how do we make sense of...
What we saw is that his prophecy was that if we don't want any person to ever say, well, only Moshe got prophecy. If only we'd have a leader that got prophecy, so we also would do great things with it. So we see a person who had not refined themselves, and they had a bad eye, and they were out to get people. When they got those levels of power, they used it for destruction. They didn't use it in a good way.
He did use it in a good way.
Because Hashem told him, he said, don't you try to curse the Jews, it's going to backfire. And he was trying to tell Balak that, and Balak wasn't listening. He said, I paid you a lot of money, curse the Jews. And then he said, I told you, if God doesn't want me to curse, it's not going to come out. In fact, the opposite will come out. Ma toivu alecha Yaakov, mishkaneisecha Yisrael. Okay, Rabbi Yisrael, we're going to be continuing with the Rambam Mamish right now.
As far as the Rambam goes...
I love the Rambam. Yes.
He has this brilliant idea as far as the idea in the word in contrast to like the picture and emotion.
My father, yes. Yeah, so my father has an idea, is that we used to be a world of idea and word. You gave somebody an idea, a good word, something to think about, and they would wrap their mind around it, they would think about it, and then the world really descended down into the world of the emotion and the image. It's just an image and like emotion that it shocks. But I really think with long format podcasts, what we're seeing now more and more is we're seeing that people are starting to demand once again an idea. Give me a spoken word. Let me think about something. I think a lot of the world is still, on their reels, and they haven't pulled out of that yet. And I don't even know where things are going at that point. You know what the metaverse is going to look like? It's just like, just hook me up, just IV. To be continued, my friends. See you guys in a minute. Call 2.